Inspector Zorath Veen had seen many terrible things in his 40 years of service to the Galactic Council. He had witnessed prison riots on mining colonies. He had documented the aftermath of border wars. He had walked through refugee camps where entire species huddled together after losing their homeworlds. Nothing had prepared him for what he found on the frontier moon of KES 6-7. The inspection had started normally enough. Zorath had arrived at the Velthari detention facility 3 days ago to conduct a routine review. The Velthari were efficient hosts, showing him clean corridors and organized records. Everything seemed proper. Everything seemed legal. But Zorath had not survived for decades in this job by accepting what others wanted him to see. On his final day, he noticed something strange in the facility blueprints. There was a wing that did not appear on any official document. When he asked about it, the guards exchanged nervous glances. When he demanded access, the warden tried to redirect him with offers of fine food and comfortable transport home. Zorath refused. He pulled rank, citing Section 47 of the Galactic Detention Standards. The warden had no choice but to comply. The unmarked wing was hidden behind 3 security doors that required special clearance. The corridor beyond was darker than the rest of the facility, and it smelled wrong. Not unclean exactly, but stale, forgotten, as if no one had bothered to maintain it properly. Then Zorath heard sounds that made his blood run cold. Small voices. Young voices. Speaking a language his translator identified as Terran Standard, human children. He walked faster, his official robe swishing against the metal floor. The warden hurried behind him, already making excuses that Zorath did not hear. All he could focus on were those voices growing louder as he approached. The cells were designed for dangerous fauna. Heavy energy barriers hummed with enough power to contain creatures 10 times the size of any child. Behind those barriers, Zorath counted 17 young humans. The oldest looked perhaps 13 or 14 years old. The youngest could not have been more than 5 or 6. They were thin. Their clothes were torn and dirty. Some of them had bruises that spoke of rough handling. But what struck Zorath most was not their physical condition. It was their eyes. They watched him with a mixture of hope and suspicion that no child should ever need to learn. "What is the meaning of this?" Zorath demanded, his voice barely controlled. The warden spread his forearms in a gesture of helplessness. These specimens were recovered from a destroyed colony transport 8 cycles ago. Since humans are not yet full council members, they were classified as unregistered biological assets. We have been studying them to better understand human development patterns. "It is all perfectly legal undercurrent. 3 months, Zorath interrupted. "You have kept children in cages for 3 months. "They are not council citizens," the warden repeated, as if this explained everything. The research value alone, Zorath stopped listening. He approached the largest cell, where most of the children had gathered. They shrank back at first, clustering together like a single frightened organism. Then one of them stepped forward. She was a girl with dark hair that had grown tangled and long. Her face was thin, her shoulders were bony, but she stood straight. She positioned herself between Zorath and the smaller children, with a protectiveness that seemed instinctive. "Are you here to help?" she asked in broken galactic common. "Or are you another one who just watches?" Zorath felt something crack inside his chest. In 40 years, he had learned to keep his emotions carefully controlled. Professional distance was essential in his line of work. But this girl, this child who had clearly been through horrors, was not crying or begging. She was protecting others. "I am here to help," he said quietly. "What is your name?" Maya Chen." She studied him with eyes that had seen too much. "They took us from the ship after the pirates attacked. They said they would contact Earth. They said someone would come for us. That was 93 days ago. I have been counting. 93 days. Zorath made a mental note. This child had kept track of every single day in captivity. "How have you survived?" he asked, not as an official question, but out of genuine wonder. Maya glanced back at the other children. A small boy was teaching an even smaller girl some kind of hand game. 2 older children were scratching symbols on the floor with bits of debris, and younger ones watched them with concentration. Despite everything, the children had organized themselves. Take care of each other, Maya said simply. I teach them numbers and letters so they do not forget. We play games so the little ones do not cry too much. We share our food when the guards forget to bring enough. She paused, her jaw tightening. We do not let them see us break. That is important. If they see us break, they win. Zorth had studied many species across the galaxy. He had written reports on social structures, survival mechanisms, and group behaviors. He had never seen anything like this. These children, abandoned and imprisoned, had created their own small civilization. They had maintained their humanity in conditions designed to strip it away. He turned to the warden, and something in his expression made the Velthri take a step backward. You will open these cells immediately, Zoroff said. I am taking these children into council protective custody. The warden shook his head. I cannot authorize that. These specimens are under the jurisdiction of the Velthri Science Directorate. You would need approval from High Command, and I assure you, they will not grant it. The research potential is too significant. Human children display remarkable psychological resilience. We need to understand how this functions. You imprison children to study why they do not break when you imprison them, Zoreth said slowly. Do you hear yourself? Science requires sacrifice, the warden replied, without a trace of shame. Surely you understand that lesser beings must sometimes lesser beings. Zoroff stepped closer, his voice dropping to something cold and dangerous. I have studied humans for many years, Warden. Do you know what I have learned? I have learned that they are not lesser beings. I have learned that they came from a death world where everything tried to kill them, and they survived anyway. I have learned that they feel emotions with an intensity that most species cannot comprehend. And I have learned that when you threaten their children, they become something that this galaxy has not seen in 10,000 years. The warden laughed nervously. One small species against the Velthari Empire? They would not dare. Zorath pulled out his communication device and began recording a priority transmission to the Galactic Council. He documented everything. The cells, the children, the wardens, casual admissions. He flagged it with the highest urgency codes available to his position. You do not understand, he said as he worked. Humans do not calculate risk the way we do. They do not weigh costs and benefits when their young are threatened. They simply act. And when they act, they do so with a fury that defies all rational analysis. He finished the transmission and sent it. Then he looked at Maya through the energy barrier. Help is coming, he promised. I do not know how long it will take, but I swear to you, the galaxy will know what happened here. Maya nodded slowly. Then she did something that would stay with Zoreth for the rest of his life. She reached through a gap in the barrier, a space barely large enough for a child's thin arm, and touched his hand. We will wait, she said. We have gotten very good at waiting. Zoroth was still standing there, holding a child's hand through a prison barrier, when the alarms began to sound. Red lights flashed through the corridor. The warden cursed and checked his communicator, and his face went pale. High Command has been notified of your transmission, he said. They are ordering a full lockdown. No one enters or leaves this facility until they arrive too. Assess the situation. Zoroth looked at Maya. The girl had not flinched at the alarms. She simply withdrew her hand and turned back to the other children, gathering them close, whispering reassurances. She knew something that the Velthri did not understand. Help was coming. Not because the galaxy was kind, but because humans would never abandon their children. It was only a matter of time, and somewhere across the stars, that transmission was already arriving at its destination. The response it would trigger would change the galaxy forever. Alien outcry. You caged human children? Do you even understand what you've done? Part 2, the transmission arrived at Earth's embassy on the Council Station at exactly 347-hour station time. A junior communications officer received it first, and within 30 seconds, she had broken protocol by waking her supervisor. Within 5 minutes, the entire embassy was awake. Within 15 minutes, Ambassador David Chen stood in the secure briefing room, watching footage that made his hands tremble. Chen had served Earth as a diplomat for 23 years. Before that, he had been a crisis negotiator for the United Nations, talking down hostage situations and preventing conflicts through patience and careful words. He had built his entire career on the belief that any problem could be solved through communication, that violence was always the last resort. He watched 17 children huddled together in cells meant for animals. He watched a 13-year-old girl stand guard over the younger ones. He watched the Velthury warden dismiss human children as specimens. When the footage ended, Chen stood in silence for a long moment. His staff waited for instructions. They expected him to begin drafting formal protests. They expected him to start the diplomatic process that would take months to produce results. Instead, Chen turned to his senior aide and spoke 5 words. "Get me Admiral Reyes." Now. Admiral Elena Reyes commanded the 3rd Fleet from the carrier constellation. She was known throughout the service as someone who never raised her voice, never lost her temper, and never, ever bluffed. When she received the ambassador's call in the middle of her sleep cycle, she listened without interruption. When the transmission ended, she asked only one question. "How long ago was this sent?" 6 hours, Chen replied. The council bureaucracy delayed it. By design, I suspect. "Those children have been there for 3 months, Reyes said quietly. "They can survive another 18 hours. That is how long it will take me to reach Velthury border space with the entire 3rd Fleet." Chen nodded, even though she could not see him. "The council will demand explanations. They will insist we follow proper procedures." "Let them insist," Reyes said. "I will be too busy to answer their calls." 18 hours later, the constellation dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Velthury territory. It did not come alone. 47 warships emerged alongside it, arranging themselves in perfect formation. Destroyers, cruisers, fighter carriers, and support vessels stretched across the void like a wall of steel and fury. The Galactic Council received notification of this deployment within minutes. Emergency sessions were called. Representatives demanded explanations. The Velthury ambassador stood before the assembly and declared this an act of aggression against a sovereign species. Then Ambassador Chen appeared on the council's main display. He looked calm. He looked professional. His voice did not waver as he spoke. "Let me be very clear about what is happening," Chen began. 17 human children were taken from a destroyed transport vessel. They were imprisoned in conditions that violate every standard of decency this council claims to uphold. They were studied like laboratory animals by a species that considers them lesser beings. He paused to let those words sink in. "These are not assets. These are not specimens. These are our children. You have 72 hours to return them unharmed to Earth custody. If this deadline passes without compliance, we will come and get them ourselves. And we will not be filing paperwork." The chamber erupted into chaos. Representatives shouted over each other. The Velthury ambassador demanded immediate sanctions against Earth. Several species called for mediation. A few quietly began evacuating their stations near Velthury space. Through it all, Elder Counselor Mixa sat in silence. She was ancient by the standards of any species, and she had devoted her long life to studying the races of the galaxy. Humans had fascinated her from the moment they emerged into interstellar society. While others saw a young primitive species, Mixa saw something far more complex and far more dangerous. When the shouting finally died down, she rose to speak. "My colleagues," she said, her voice carrying the weight of centuries, "I understand your confusion. I understand your outrage at what you perceive as human aggression. But I must tell you that you have fundamentally misunderstood what is happening here." She turned toward the Velthury delegation. "You see humans as reasonable, as diplomatic, as the species that talks everything to death before acting. This is true under normal circumstances. Humans prefer negotiation. They value peace. They will endure great personal hardship to avoid conflict." She paused, her multiple eyes blinking slowly. "But you have done something that changes all of this? You have threatened their young." The chamber grew quiet. "I have studied humans for 140 years, Mixa continued. I have watched them colonize harsh worlds that killed other species. I have watched them survive disasters that should have ended them. I have asked myself many times what makes them so resilient, and I finally understand the answer." She gestured toward the display where the Third Fleet hung in formation. Humans did not become apex predators through aggression alone. Many species are aggressive. Humans became apex predators because they protect their young with a ferocity that defies all rational calculation. They do not weigh costs against benefits. They do not consider political consequences. They do not care about their own survival. When their children are threatened, they simply act. The Velthri ambassador interrupted. Then they are irrational, primitive. Surely the Council will not reward such barbaric. You are not listening, Rixa said sharply. I am not praising or condemning. I am warning. You have triggered an evolutionary response that humans cannot moderate. It is written into their biology. It is woven into their culture. Every story they tell, every value they hold sacred, every hero they celebrate, centers on the same theme. Protect the children. Always protect the children. She looked around the chamber at representatives who still did not understand. That fleet is not a negotiating tactic. It is not posturing. Ambassador Chen has given you 72 hours because he is a diplomat and feels obligated to offer alternatives. But I assure you, when those hours expire, those ships will move. And nothing in this galaxy will stop them. Back on Key 6-7, the lockdown continued. Additional guards had been posted around the unmarked wing. Velthri scientists had arrived to accelerate their research, worried that their subjects might be taken away before the studies were complete. They talked openly about the children, as if they were not there. As if they could not understand, Maya understood everything. She gathered the children in the corner of the largest cell, away from the barriers where the guards could watch them. She spoke in whispers, using English words the aliens could not translate. Something is happening, she told them. The guards are scared. They keep checking their communicators. That means someone is coming. Who? Asked Thomas, a 10-year-old boy who had barely spoken since their capture. Our people, Maya said. Earth. I do not know how long it will take, but they know we are here now. They are coming. How do you know? Demanded Lisa, who was 9 and practical by nature. Maya had asked herself this question many times over the past 93 days. How did she know? Logic suggested that no one would risk war over 17 children. Politics suggested that they would be abandoned to avoid conflict. Everything reasonable pointed toward despair. But Maya had grown up on Earth colony ships. She had listened to her parents tell stories about human history. She knew what humans had done for their children across thousands of years. Parents who worked themselves to exhaustion so their children could have better lives. Communities that sacrificed everything to protect their young from harm. Soldiers who charged into certain death to save children they had never met. Because that is who we are, Maya answered simply. We do not abandon our children. Ever, no matter the cost. The smallest child in the group, a 6-year-old girl named Emma, crawled into Maya's lap. She had stopped talking weeks ago, traumatized into silence. Now she whispered something that only Maya could hear. What did she say? Thomas asked. Maya smiled despite everything. She said she wants to go home. We will, Maya promised, wrapping her arms around the little girl. We will, through the tiny window of their cell, if they stood on their toes and craned their necks. The children could see a sliver of sky. That night, for the first time in months, that sky was not empty. Lights moved among the stars, ships, hundreds of them. The children watched in silence as the fleet took up position around their prison moon. They did not cheer. They did not cry. They simply held each other and waited. Help had arrived. Now the real test would begin. Alien outcry. You caged human children? Do you even understand what you've done? Part 3. Velthri, High Commander Draxus, stood on the bridge of his command station and watched the human fleet with growing unease. His tactical officers had been running calculations for hours, and the numbers made no sense. The humans had brought enough firepower to challenge his entire defense network, but they were not attacking. They simply waited in perfect formation, like predators watching prey. What are they doing? Demanded Science Director Veth, who had rushed from Keswick 7 to oversee the crisis. If they intend to attack, why do they hesitate? They are following their ambassador's timeline, Draxus replied. 72 hours. They gave us 72 hours. A bluff, Veth insisted. No species would go to war over 17 worthless specimens. The research value alone, stop calling them specimens, Draxus interrupted. Something in his voice made Veth fall silent. I have fought humans before, Director. 20 years ago, during the frontier disputes. Do you know what I learned? Veth shook his head. I learned that humans do not bluff about their children. I watched a single human freighter. Captain crash his own ship into a raiding vessel to protect a transport carrying colonist families. He had no weapons. He had no chance of survival. He did it anyway. Draxus turned to face the scientist. You have made a serious mistake, Director. I am not certain any of us can fix it. Before Veth could respond, a new transmission arrived from the human fleet. Admiral Reyes appeared on their screens, her face calm, but her eyes hard as stone. This is your final notice, she said. You have 6 hours remaining before our deadline expires. I want to be absolutely clear about what happens next. Every hour you delay past this deadline, we will disable one of your orbital defense platforms. Not destroy, disable. We want you to watch us do it. We want you to understand that we could destroy them. The distinction matters. Draxus felt something cold settle in his stomach. He knew what Reyes was doing. She was demonstrating capability while showing restraint. She was proving that Earth's forces could take anything they wanted, but were choosing to offer chances instead. It was a message designed to humiliate without provoking panic. It was brilliant and terrifying. She is bluffing, Veth repeated, though his voice wavered now. Then let us test that, Draxus said quietly. He gave no order to release the children. 6 hours passed. Nothing happened for several minutes after the deadline. Veth began to smile, certain that his assessment had been correct. Then the third orbital platform went dark. No explosion. No debris. The humans had simply shut it down with precision strikes that disabled its power core without causing casualties. Impossible, whispered the tactical officer. Those platforms have shields rated for fleet bombardment. How did they 2 hours until the next one? Draxus said. They are keeping score, Director. Every platform they disable is a message. Do you understand it now? Veth still refused to accept reality. The Council will intervene. They cannot allow a junior species to threaten a founding member. Our allies. What allies? Draxus pulled up galactic communications on the main display. The Keith have declared neutrality. The Morvani are evacuating their stations along our border. Even the consortium has gone silent. He let out a bitter laugh. Do you know why? Because they are all watching the same thing we are watching. They are all asking themselves the same question. If humans will do this for 17 children who are not even important, what will they do for something that truly matters? On the moon below, Maya sensed the change before she saw it. The guards who had watched them with bored contempt were now nervous. They kept glancing at their communicators. They spoke to each other in hushed voices. One of them, a young officer who had been kinder than the others, kept looking at the children with something that might have been guilt. That officer approached Maya's cell late in the artificial night. He glanced around to make sure no one was watching, then knelt to speak through the barrier. You need to be ready, he whispered in careful galactic common. Things are about to change quickly. Your people are here. They are not leaving without you. Maya studied him. She had learned to read Velthari expressions over the past months, and this one was genuinely conflicted. Why are you telling me this? Why do you care? The officer was quiet for a moment. I have young ones of my own. When I was first assigned here, I told myself you were different. You were aliens. You were subjects of legitimate research. He shook his head slowly. But you are not different. I watched you teach the small ones. I watched you hold them when they cried. I watched you give away your own food so they would not be hungry. He looked at her with something like shame. You were just children. That should have been enough. It should always have been enough. Then help us, Maya said. When they come for us, help us. The officer nodded slowly. I will do what I can. I am sorry it took me so long to see the truth. Above them, the second platform went dark precisely on schedule. Then the third. The Velthari still did not release the children. Draxa suspected that Veth had convinced High Command that any concession would show weakness. They were willing to lose their entire defense network to avoid admitting they had been wrong. Admiral Reyes gave them one final warning. We have demonstrated our capability. She broadcast to all Velthari channels. We have shown restraint that you do not deserve. This ends now. We are coming for our children. Any resistance will be met with the minimum force necessary to overcome it. But make no mistake, it will be overcome. The rescue operation began at dawn, local time. Human dropships descended through the atmosphere like falling stars. They moved with precision that spoke of endless training and absolute coordination. Velthari defense systems tried to target them, but the ships were too fast, too skilled, dodging and weaving through fire that should have been impossible to avoid. At the detention facility, the guards saw the ships coming and made a critical decision. Most of them simply walked away. They dropped their weapons, removed their insignias, and disappeared into the facility's lower levels. They wanted no part of what was coming. A few guards remained, either too loyal or too stupid to retreat. They took up positions around the unmarked wing, weapons ready. The young officer who had spoken to Maya was among them, but his weapon was pointed at the floor. The breach came from 3 directions at once. Human soldiers in advanced combat armor flowed through the corridors like water, moving with terrifying speed. They did not kill. They incapacitated, they restrained, they moved on. Every Velthari who resisted was put down without lethal force. The young officer dropped his weapon and raised his hands. A human soldier approached him, rifle aimed at his chest. "He helped us," Maya shouted from her cell. "He gave us extra food. He warned us you were coming. Do not hurt him." The soldier paused. Inside his helmet, eyes that had been cold and focused softened slightly. He lowered his weapon and spoke into his communicator. One friendly among the guards. "The children confirm. Take him into protective custody." The energy barriers came down one by one. Medical teams rushed in, checking each child with gentle efficiency. They had been preparing for this moment for days, and they knew that physical rescue was only the first step. These children had been through trauma that would take years to heal. Maya was the last to leave her cell. She had insisted on watching every other child go first, counting them as they were carried or led to safety. Only when the number reached 16 did she allow herself to step through the barrier. Outside the facility, sight waited that broke through all her careful control. Hundreds of human soldiers stood in formation under the alien sky. As Maya emerged, blinking in the light, an order was given. Every soldier snapped to attention. Every soldier saluted. They were saluting her. They were honoring a 13-year-old girl who had kept 16 children alive through 93 days of captivity. Maya felt tears streaming down her face for the first time in months. Not tears of sadness. Tears of relief. Tears of gratitude. Tears that came from finally being able to let go of the weight she had carried. A woman in Admiral's insignia approached her. Alina Reyes knelt in the dirt to meet Maya at eye level. "Kept them alive," Reyes said softly. "You kept them hoping. You did something extraordinary, Maya Chen." Maya wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I just did what I had to do. Anyone would have done the same." Reyes shook her head. "No, not anyone. You. And now it is over. You are safe. You are going home." But as the dropships lifted off with their precious cargo, Maya looked back at the facility growing smaller below. She thought about the young officer who had finally found his conscience. She thought about the warden who had called them specimens. She thought about a galaxy that had not known what to make of humans until this moment. It was not over. She understood that somehow. The rescue was just the beginning. The galaxy had seen something today that would change everything. The question was whether that change would be for better or worse. Alien Outcry. You caged human children? Do you even understand what you've done? Part 4. The Galactic Council had never experienced anything quite like the human demand for a tribunal. Every species understood war. Every species understood reparations. But the humans were not asking for territory. They were not demanding resources or trade concessions. They were insisting on something far more unsettling. They wanted accountability. Ambassador. Chen presented the formal request with the same calm precision that had characterized every human action since the crisis began. He asked for a special tribunal to examine what had happened on Kesek 7. He asked for evidence to be presented publicly. He asked for those responsible to face judgment not through backroom negotiations, but through open proceedings that the entire galaxy could witness. "This is unprecedented," declared the Velthiri representative. "Internal matters cannot be subject to external judgment. Our sovereignty, your sovereignty ended when you put children in cages," Chen interrupted. His voice never rose, but something in his tone made the chamber fall silent. "You had 3 months to correct this mistake through internal channels. Your own people tried to report it. They were ignored. Now it falls to the galaxy to determine what kind of civilization we want to be." The vote passed by a narrow margin. Too many species had watched the human fleet. Too many representatives had noticed their own citizens reacting with horror to the footage from the detention facility. Public opinion across the galaxy had shifted in ways that political calculations could not ignore. The tribunal convened 2 weeks later in the council's great chamber. Witnesses were called. Evidence was presented. The Velthiri defense team argued procedure and jurisdiction and the fine points of interstellar law. And then Maya Chen was asked to testify. The council had debated this decision for days. Some argued that putting a child through such an experience was cruel. Others, worried about the emotional impact of her testimony on the proceedings. In the end, Maya herself settled the matter. When asked if she wanted to speak, she simply said yes. She walked into the chamber surrounded by counselors and translators, a small figure in a room designed for beings far larger than any human. The representatives of 100 species watched her approach the speaking platform. Many of them had only seen humans in recordings. Many of them had never considered that human children could look so fragile and so strong at the same time. Maya did not need notes. She had lived every moment she described. She told them about the attack on their transport ship. She told them about the terror of being taken by strange creatures who did not speak her language. She told them about the cells that hummed with energy barriers, about the food that came irregularly, about the scientists who examined them like objects. "They measured us," she said, her voice steady. "They took samples of our hair and our blood. They watched us through cameras every hour of every day. When we cried, they recorded how long we cried. When we fought, they studied our aggression patterns. We were not children to them. We were data." She told them about organizing the other children, about creating routines to give their days structure, about inventing games using pebbles and scratches on the floor, about sharing food when the guards forgot to bring enough. "Tommy was scared of the dark," she said. "So every night I would tell him stories until he fell asleep. Emma stopped talking after the first week. So I held her and sang the songs my mother used to sing to me. I did not know if anyone was coming for us, but I knew that we had to stay together. We had to take care of each other. That is what humans do." The chamber was absolutely silent. "I am not here to make you feel sorry for us," Maya continued. "We survived. We are home now. We will heal." She looked directly at the Velthiri delegation. "I am here because I need you to understand something. What happened to us was not an accident. It was not a mistake. It was a choice. Someone decided that we did not matter. Someone decided that our suffering was acceptable. Someone decided that children could be treated like specimens because we came from a species you do not respect." She paused. And when she spoke again, her voice carried a weight beyond her years. "That choice is the reason we are here today. Not our rescue. Not the fleet. The choice. Because if you can make that choice once, you can make it again. And next time, it might be someone else's children." The Velthiri defense team tried to recover. They argued that the research had produced valuable scientific data. They pointed out that the children had not been physically tortured. They suggested that Maya's testimony was emotional rather than factual. Then Dr. Sarah Okonkwo took the stand. She was the physician who had been treating the rescued children since their return to human space. She was also an expert in developmental psychology and the effects of trauma on young minds. The defense suggests that these children were not harmed because they were not physically tortured, she began. I would like to address that claim directly. She presented medical data, psychological evaluations, developmental assessments. She explained in clear, simple terms what prolonged captivity does to growing minds. She described nightmares, anxiety disorders, attachment issues that would take years of therapy to address. But that is not what I want you to remember from my testimony, she said finally. What I want you to remember is this. She looked around the chamber at representatives who shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The Velthari wanted to understand human resilience. They wanted to know why human children survive. What would break the young of other species? I will tell you the secret, and it is not genetic. It is not biological. It is love, she gestured toward Maya, who sat in the witness section surrounded by counselors. Love is Maya teaching 6-year-olds to count using pebbles. Love is children sharing their food with each other when guards forgot to feed them. Love is 17 kids who decided that if they were going to survive, they would survive together. Her voice hardened. You could have asked us. We would have shared this knowledge freely. That is what humans do. We share what we learn so others can benefit. But you saw children, frightened and vulnerable children, and you saw only research subjects. That is not a scientific failure. That is a moral one. The tribunal continued for 3 more days. Witnesses testified. Evidence accumulated. The Velthari defense grew increasingly desperate, trying to shift blame to individual actors rather than systemic failures. On the final day, the Velthari High Commander who had ordered the lockdown made a last desperate move. He revealed the true purpose of the research. His scientists had discovered something remarkable in human developmental biology. Human children possessed adaptive mechanisms that could potentially revolutionize medical science across the galaxy. The research could save millions of lives. You must weigh this against the temporary discomfort of 17 subjects, he argued. The greater good demands the greater good. Ambassador Chen rose from his seat, abandoning diplomatic protocol for the first time in the proceedings. You imprisoned children for 3 months, and you dare speak of the greater good. He faced the chamber, his composure finally cracking to reveal the fury beneath. Let me tell you about the greater good. The greater good is built on a foundation of basic decency. It is built on the principle that some things are simply wrong, regardless of what benefits they might produce. If your civilization cannot understand that harming children is wrong, then your civilization has nothing to teach the galaxy about the greater good. The chamber erupted into debate. Representatives argued positions. Votes were proposed and withdrawn. Through it all, Maya watched with eyes that understood more than anyone expected. She had come seeking justice. She had found something more complicated. She had found a galaxy wrestling with its own conscience, trying to decide what it believed in. The verdict would come tomorrow. But Maya already knew that whatever the council decided, something had changed. The galaxy had seen humanity at its most protective and its most principled. They had seen children who refused to break and adults who refused to abandon them. For better or worse, nothing would ever be quite the same. Alien outcry. You caged human children? Do you even understand what you've done? Part 5. The council chamber was full to capacity when the verdict was announced. Representatives from every member species had gathered along with observers from dozens of non-member worlds. News broadcasts carried the proceedings across the galaxy. Billions of beings watched and waited. Elder Counselor Mixa had been chosen to deliver the judgment. She rose slowly, her ancient body bearing the weight of the decision she carried. The tribunal has reviewed all evidence presented, she began. We have heard testimony from the victims, from medical experts, from the accused, and from numerous witnesses. We have examined the legal frameworks that govern relations between species. We have debated the meaning of justice and the limits of sovereignty. She paused, looking around the chamber with eyes that had seen civilizations rise and fall. Our verdict is as follows. The Velthari Empire is found responsible for the unlawful detention and abuse of 17 human children. This is not a matter of differing cultural standards. This is not a question of scientific necessity. This is a fundamental violation of the principles upon which this council was founded. The Velthari delegation sat in stunned silence. They had expected political compromise. They had expected the kind of quiet arrangement that usually resolved interspecies disputes. They had not expected this. The Velthari shall pay reparations to each affected child and their families, Mrixa continued. They shall fund the establishment of a galactic child protection framework. They shall open their research facilities to independent oversight, and those individuals directly responsible for ordering and implementing the detention shall face personal accountability under council authority. She turned to address the broader chamber. But this verdict is not simply about punishment. It is about who we choose to be. Every species here has made mistakes. Every species here has caused harm through ignorance or indifference. What matters is whether we learn, whether we grow, whether we become better than we were. Her gaze settled on the human delegation. The humans could have responded with vengeance. They had the power. They had the justification. Instead, they demanded justice. They asked us to be better. That is not weakness. That is wisdom. The vote to ratify the verdict was nearly unanimous. Even species that had initially supported the Velthari could not defend the indefensible in the face of public opinion. The galaxy had spoken, and its message was clear. In the months that followed, the Velthari government collapsed, not from human pressure or council sanctions, but from internal shame. Their own citizens had watched the tribunal. They had seen Maya's testimony. They had heard Dr. Okonkwo explain what love meant to a species that had forgotten. The young officer who had helped Maya, whose name was Kalen, became a prominent voice in the reform movement. He testified about the culture that had allowed such crimes to occur. He spoke about the small compromises that had led to great evils. He helped build a new Velthari government committed to reconciliation rather than domination. The rescued children returned to their families, or for those whose parents had died in the transport attack, 2 carefully selected adoptive homes. They received therapy. They attended school. They slowly learned to be children again rather than survivors. Maya Chen became something she had never expected. She became a symbol. News organizations wanted interviews. Political leaders wanted photographs. Academics wanted to study how a 13-year-old girl had held together. A group of traumatized children through 93 days of captivity. She refused most requests. She did not want to be famous. She wanted to be normal. She wanted to go to school and argue with her parents about homework and worry about things that 13-year-olds were supposed to worry about, but she agreed to one final public appearance. 1 year after the rescue, Earth's embassy on the council station dedicated a memorial to the children of Keswick 7. It was a simple sculpture of children holding hands, reaching upward toward the stars. It represented not just the 17 who had been rescued, but every child across the galaxy who deserved protection. Maya was asked to speak at the dedication. She stood at the podium, looking out at delegates from dozens of species, at journalists, at the ordinary citizens who had come to witness history. When I was in that cell, she began, I used to imagine what I would say if I ever got out. I thought about all the angry words I would use. I thought about telling everyone how much I hated the people who had hurt us. She smiled slightly. That is not what I want to say today, because that is not who humans are. We do not just survive. We grow, we forgive. Not because we forget, but because we are strong enough to build something better than hatred. She gestured to the memorial behind her. The galaxy asked, what makes humans special? Here is your answer. We could have burned Velthari space to ash. We had the power. We had the justification. Instead, we rescued our children, demanded justice, and then we moved forward. Together. Her voice strengthened. That is what this memorial represents. Not just 17 children who survived. Not just one rescue mission. It represents a choice. The choice to protect the weak. The choice to demand accountability. The choice to believe that the galaxy can be better than its worst moments. She looked directly at the cameras broadcasting her words across 1,000 worlds. To every child out there who feels alone, who feels forgotten, who wonders if anyone cares. I want you to know something. Someone cares. Someone will always care. And if you ever need help, someone will come. Not because it is easy, not because it is profitable, but because that is who we choose to be. After the ceremony, Maya found herself standing alone in front of the memorial. The crowds had dispersed. The cameras had moved on to the next story. She traced her fingers over the sculpted hands reaching toward the sky. Admiral Elena Reyes, now retired, approached quietly. She had attended the ceremony in civilian clothes, avoiding attention. But she had wanted to see Maya one more time. You did something extraordinary, Reyes said softly. You kept them alive in there. You kept them believing. Maya shook her head. I just did what any human would do. Reyes studied the young girl who had become something remarkable through no choice of her own. She saw the strength that remained even after the trauma. She saw the compassion that had refused to become bitterness. She saw the future that this child represented, Reyes said finally. You did what the best of us do. You found light in the darkness. You gave hope when there was none. You proved that the human spirit cannot be caged, no matter how strong the bars. Maya considered this for a long moment. Then she looked up at the stars visible through the station's transparent dome. Do you think they learned anything? She asked. The Velthary, the Council, the Galaxy. Do you think anything really changed? Reyes followed her gaze to the infinite darkness above. I think you planted a seed, she answered. I think you showed them something they had never seen before. Whether it grows into something good depends on choices that have not been made yet. She placed a gentle hand on Maya's shoulder. But you gave them a chance. That is all any of us can do. Maya nodded slowly. She thought about the other children, scattered across human space now, healing at their own pace. She thought about Kalen, the young officer who had found his conscience too late but had made it count. She thought about her parents, who held her every night and promised that she was safe now. She thought about the galaxy stretching out before her, full of species she had never met and worlds she had never seen. A galaxy that had watched humanity stand up for 17 children and had been changed by what it witnessed. I think I understand now, she said quietly. Why humans never give up. Why we always keep going. Why is that? Reyes asked. Maya smiled. And in that smile was everything she had learned through 93 days of captivity and 1 year of recovery. It was a smile that held pain and hope in equal measure, because someone always comes. No matter how dark it gets, no matter how hopeless it seems, someone always comes. She turned to face the retired admiral. And one day, I want to be the one who comes for someone else. I want to be the reason another child believes that help is on the way. Reyes felt tears prick at her eyes. She had commanded fleets. She had faced down enemies who threatened billions of lives. None of it had affected her like this moment, standing beside a child who had found purpose in survival. Then that is exactly what you will do, Reyes said, and the galaxy will be better for it. They stood together in silence as the stars wheeled overhead. Two humans from different generations united by the same simple truth. The truth that had echoed through human history since the very beginning. Protect the children. Always protect the children. And when you cannot protect them, come for them. Always come.